what talent is it really to use disparaging words? So I want to take back any even vaguely insulting inferences to George III. I also heard that he went mad in his later years, and it turns out that it could have been due to arsenic poisoning, which they said was prevalent in medicine and cosmetics. So presumably it was just one of those things, just a coincidence. But finally, I think we can have pity for despots and people. I'm not saying he went to hell specifically or was set up to go to hell under those circumstances. But many despots are set up in this world, and what you would think are favorable conditions turn out to be not so favorable. Just think of Seneca and his fortunate pupil that had such a fortunate tutor. Was it Sulla or something like that? That just went totally crackers under those fortunate conditions, so-called. So, if you can find it in your heart and you can find some pity for people that end up on the despotic side of the coin. But of course, we can't just have all of our pity for people that are not just objectively bad, but subjectively bad as well. But bad for who? Bad for themselves. That's when we get back to the individual practitioner. Look into what is bad for yourself and stop doing that, including using any kinds of disparagements of others, because what would that indicate? Is there a connection? What is it doing? How is it interacting with your state of mind? And if it's negatively influencing it, it could be also delusional. There's people that wake up one morning and decide, well, this, and this are the reasons I'm in a bad mood, and I'm justified in having it because of these things, which may or may not be verifiably true. But if they just didn't reach out for those reasons, if they took a different approach, if they contradicted themselves and their bad habits, then they really would have no one to blame. Which is when I like to return to that wonderful metaphor by Meister de Eckhart and the wax tablet just frying in the sun and just melting back into perfect levelness, just glistening, like it becomes a fluid, and then you can cover it with some shade, and then it starts to congeal, it hardens, and then you can bring it back into a cooler place. And there you go, look, it's a fresh tablet, nothing scribbled on it. It's ready for use. It's expansive. You don't have to fit the good parts in a little corner that's left. The whole tablet can be written anew. And you can change your script, right? You could say, well, I scribbled yesterday or an hour ago this or that curse. And now I'm just going to rewrite only good things in a very fine, expansive script. take my time on each letter. See each letter as a rune, to make each letter a rune, and to feel each letter as transformative power to the cosmic forces that surround us, and not to speak any word that would not vibrate well in the halls of heaven. And so we compose our own harmonious music. And it resounds in our hearts and minds, no matter what is going on around us, which is probably a lot of aggravation. Just assume it to be that way. Anything that would take you away from the heavenly realms, the heavenly heart, is a bad distraction, isn't it? That's what you learn when you learn to love solitude and the heavenly fruits that one can imbibe on in those places, without a care in the world, without any pressure to do this, without any force to do that, not anything rushing you through. Hurry up, you have to do this, that, then this and that, and then there's this practical thing, and then that practical consideration. No, it's just one moment melts into the other, becomes minutes, becomes hours, becomes days of repose, delightful repose, of leisure. Something that Seneca reinvented in his later years after gone and going through so many political turbulences and personalities and blamings and accusations and condemnations. He returned to the countryside. He was banished. He was exiled. And he didn't just start running back to the city to be the first person to knock on somebody's door. He changed his way of thinking. He changed his ambitions. And I think we always need to return to that foundational principle, that we are not written in stone. We are transformative. We're a transformative element. And allow yourself to change. If you were an ambitious person, a determined person, a focused on only this type of person, allow yourself the ability, not the ability, allow yourself give yourself the permission to change. Allow yourself to change and accept what you are after you change, and don't be disparaging about change. Go to a natural stretch of beach and just go to it every day. And now imagine if you were a stickler for convention or for order. And just tell yourself, oh, this needs to be done this way, that, oh, this washed up on the shore, that needs to be collected. And then just look at how ridiculous you would be if you did that. Do that experiment. Do it 7 days. Go to some remote location. Everything changes. It's radical change. You want to talk about radical change in nature? Put yourself in a place of radical natural change and just watch how things change. And you watch yourself making judgments. Oh, I like this, I like that. But then Do realize how absurd it is to affix labels like that to your likes and dislikes. Oh, that rock shouldn't have fallen down that cliff. Oh no, who's going to fix that? Who's going to come clear that away? Well, if it's not your job, ask yourself, is that your job? If it's not, who cares? You care? Why do you care? The universe doesn't care. Look how much the universe doesn't care about things. Look at that ultimate detachment that the universe has. If you get into astronomy, you can watch stars colliding against each other. Just think of how much the universe just doesn't care when you see things like that happening. Whole planets get burnt up. This one will be burnt up one day. No human life. Not suitable for human life at some point in the future. So you think the universe cares? Well, it doesn't. But why do you care? Just think of the little things you care about that you think are big things. When there are galaxies colliding into each other in outer space. So give yourself perspective. Take things up, way up. And then go way, way down. Go way past this place, way down into atomic collisions just happening on a micro scale. That's another cool way of looking at things. As above, so below. Lightning flash hits a tree that was growing for 400 years, slices it in two, sets both sides on fire. I really like that tree. Well, the universe didn't give a damn. So that's just how things work. Go down to the microscopic level. Look at bacteria in a dish fighting it out. Look at that. It's like a war. You can look at it like, oh my goodness, it's killing all the good cells. This is really ravenous type of bacteria here. Wow, look at this. How many cells did they kill? 1 million cells in one day? That's crazy. And then you zoom out. Okay, well, how big is a cell? Well, you can't see it, right? It doesn't even fit on the head of a pin. But there's a war raging. And lives are being lost. Yeah, those cells, they don't want to die. They're fighting like hell. There's somebody in the hospital right now. Their cells are fighting a major war to keep them alive. Do you know that person's name? Is it your name? Will they win that battle? Do you know? Can you know? Even if you get the medicine that they said will come on the next truck. But they said that yesterday. Well, you might. But it's always helpful when a little bit of luck is involved. That's the other great thing about this universe. People are lucky, and yet they're still dissatisfied. But a lot of lucky people, they're so lucky, and yet they don't realize it. Their mind automatically reverts back to the most disturbing thing. And yet they think they're smart. When the smart thing to do is dodge those bullets. Bullet number 1. It's 7:01 in the morning. First bullet. Are you going to take it or dodge it? Second bullet. See, I could do another film. It would just be called Bullets. And it's about a day. It's about a day full of mind bullets and how they're dodged by a bullet dodging master, like a Teflon man. And yeah, don't take those bullets. Don't take those mind poisons. And if you took some, inject that anti-venom, that anti-poison. Because that can happen to the best of us. With these complex emotional reactions to different changes, it can happen to any of us. And I liken people who carry medical packs with them. See, a lot of people are like, oh yeah, I know how to fight, I know how to aim a gun and shoot. But the people who have, you can really tell the people who have been in some real situations, because they're not just carrying the gun. They got that medical pack. Because they've seen things splatter and get wrecked, and they only wish they had those things that they now have in their pack with them when the thing went down and they didn't have it with them. But even when you have it with you, it's usually not enough. But it's a whole lot better than nothing. So think of your anti-venom satchel, your invisible satchel of anti-venom. Think of that as something like that, like a medical pack that you carry with you, you keep stocked, and you update it based on some of the experiences or the environments that you might find yourself in. Oh, this environment is full of malaria. So, like, you got quinine and the other stuff. The good stuff, the new stuff with you too. Like the stuff people don't know about, but that you learned about because you got into a scrape or two with it and survived it. You've got that with you. The other people got the old stuff. But even the old stuff's better than no stuff. It's the way you need to think of theology too. No, religion isn't dead. Theology isn't dead. It's a living art and science. And if it lives within you, it gets you results. Now, I wouldn't recommend taking shortcuts, but sometimes you might have to if you have to. But come back to doing things the right way when you get a chance, which might be right now, right here. You were busy thinking of something else, forgot about repetitive practices that get your mind right, and defining religion that way, and not as something that doesn't work or is foolish or misleading. That has a lot of depth to it, that isn't stupid. You might be presented a stupid version, but that's not the end of the matter. So that's also part of that wax tablet, going back to wax, is you give up the conceit that you think you know what religion is or was. Just let that go. You scribbled up bull crap. Let that just melt in the sun. Come back to it in a couple of days or a couple of hours or a couple of minutes and start over. What would be one that works? What are a couple of the things you've heard that are insightful, and work with those things? And then work with coming back to those things over and over and over again until it's automatic. It's part of you. It is you. So that even if you lose consciousness, you return. It's right there where you left it. But returning to George III for a second. Probably had nothing to do with him at all. He was probably a nice guy. Always is the faceless people, the people history doesn't really record. Advisors, consultants, middlemen. It's probably all their fault. But yeah, that's not who history blames, and we shouldn't blame George III for the wrong turn his lineage has taken, or took at that time. But we know all lineages can go the right way, then the wrong way, then the right way again. So we're just going to give everybody a chance to improve and to leave behind things that don't work or didn't work or had terrible results, and move ahead with the things that are more promising and less deceptive. Ice. How do you get rid of ice? How do you melt it? How do you release captured energies, captured vitality? How do we remove the resistance and hindrance? Well, a lot of people, they'll instantly say, well, light a fire. You know, the opposite of ice, but it's not always practical, and it's not accessible, especially imagine if your fire is trapped in the ice. Reread Jack London's To Light a Fire. Look, under Arctic conditions, the thing you want to burn, it's frozen. It's captured in ice. What then? Well, old Jack got lucky, but there's a more cosmic force out there called Lagus. Water. Yeah, all that sea ice gets melted by water. The power of water. All the attributes of water. The flexibility of water. The subtleness of water. The magic of water. It's also, oh, surprise, a transitional phase. Water can turn into ice, but it can also turn to water, and then it can also be released as steam, like in the breath. Invisible. The humidity in the air is water. It's Lagus. It has the Trinity in it. 3 states. So how do you melt ice? How do you melt hindrances? Well, look at that. Water. 2 degrees above freezing melts ice. Melts a hindrance. And no fire needed. Then it becomes water. And death is also something you can see as water. There's a relationship. You could see our lives in the material realm, or physicality is captured. But death is that transitional phase, and then we're released into the air. We're released into the cosmos. All of our combustibleness, the spark of life, is then released, because it is ready to be burned. It is ready to burn like a fiery meteor or a fiery arrow, bent by a silvery bow, and then released into infinity. But these things make people fearful that are stuck in the ice, stuck in Isa, frozen. But for those people, I say Lagus. Allow water to transform you. And allow death to release you. Even the thought of it. Memento mori every day. You're afraid? Think of death. You could be dead. You're not dead. Allow yourself to melt out of calcified ways of thinking, fears, hindrances. You could be dead. You're not. Let that spark glow. Let it burst into combustive force. Let it burn bright. To the moon, to the stars, and beyond. And don't forget to say Alu 3 times. Really let that vibration transmute into the universal sound. Then after that, say E Pion. E Pion. E Pion. Because that is praise and thanks to the healer, to healing. Let that energy flow and resonate in you and around you forever. As for the passage of time, I recommend you get a 24-hour clock. And each number that you reflect on a correspondence to the runes, so that each hour you have something to think about, to contemplate, to deepen within you all the vital forces of the universe. 1 through 24. And let your contemplations be holy. For this is one of the many gifts of God. And let it be perpetual and continuous, so that your practice can take on the forces of divinity. Someone wrote in, said, it's pretty fascinating what you said about the devil. What else can you say? Thank you. And I was thinking about it, and I think it's important to see the psychological aspect primarily, and also the primary function of Mara from a Buddhist perspective is delusion. But how is delusion conducted? Well, it's usually some type of delusional attachment to either something or to others or to, and this is where it gets really difficult, the concept of a self per se. Or oftentimes it expresses itself as some type of conceit or some type of comparison. Like, this is not, have you ever found yourself thinking, like, this isn't good enough for me? This might be good enough for others, but it's not good enough for me. Because me, and mine, and I deserve better than this. That's a devilish kind of way of seeing things. And it's a sliding scale, so you're never satisfied with no matter what you have if you let that principle ride. But of course you will delusionally think, well, no, of course I would be satisfied if I had these things that I think I want. But that's just a delusion too. So it's layers of delusion, like layers on a cake, that keep people going around in circles. So if you look at the devil card in the weight tarot deck, you can see him. He's sort of an animalistic figure, and he's not happy, right? He's not satisfied, looks pretty dissatisfied. And the people are chained, man and woman, chained. So, and he's putting a fire under the butt of the man. And the man's looking for something from the woman, and the woman's picking strawberries out of her butt and doling them out one by one to the man who has his hands stretched out. So I think that describes a simp-like existence pretty well. But yeah, those chains around the neck, close to the head. And that block, it's like, materials, right? Material things, but again, that concept of self, which is what brings us back to the very useful concept in Buddhism of no self, if you can attain it. But see, oftentimes we just go around and around and around. We run away from it, we come back to it. We run away from it, we come back to it. We run away from that self, but then we have this self. So, again, the psychology of human beings is to be egoically driven automatically. I'm talking about having people engage a manual clutch and saying, oh, guess what? Yeah, okay, egotism is automatic, but there is a manual way of disconnecting the disconnected zoink, the clutch. You can disengage, but people might disengage for a meditative session, but then they're back again. They re-engage whether they want to or not. I'm that kid that had these high expectations, and now look at my life. It's a disaster. It's a disaster. I've rolled it. I've hated it. See? How do people try to forget themselves? Well, yeah, drugs is one way, at least dull that type of sense of pain that they have because of the incongruencies they feel between reality and the subjective reality. But if they were to look closer, why are they suffering all this suffering? They might have a false concept of self. Why can't they entertain that idea? But even if they entertain it, how do they disabuse themselves of it? We run into those easier said than done scenarios, don't we? But I still feel this way. I can't not feel this way. How do I stop feeling this way? Yeah, well, that's what the practice is about. It's where I come back to the Buddhist methods of self-abasement. Right? That's usually what keeps Westerners away from it, because that's something they think that's just a step too far. They can do this and that, they can entertain some theories, but self-abasement, perpetual self-abasement. Oh, that's too hard. That's too much. See, too much for the ego to take. But then they have the sufferings based on the things I just said. Which is why it is considered a helpful practice, and it very much is, to reconsider the life of Siddhartha or Gautama, who was a prince at a time when being an aristocrat really did mean something, like having the power of life over death, right? Life and death. As much luxury as anyone could have, as many things, and yet still he realized he wasn't satisfied, and he took on the whole process of self-abasement. 6 years in the jungle as a total nobody, begging for rice, as a prince that had no compunction. Nobody told him to do that. In fact, they told him not to do that. His whole family would have paid anything for him not to have done that. How about his stunningly beautiful wife, who had a kid who had absolutely no desire to see him do that? Did it anyway. Oh, he crazy. That's what people would say today. Grab him and lock him up. All right. But see, people jump to conclusions oftentimes. And okay, how many unskillful people do that? But essentially, they're attempting to get away from a self that's driving them crazy. And because we sort of are trained in a way, in a common, vulgar, normal way, to think that a self is not really optional, that the self is defined by circumstances or other people define the self. You're a talented kid. How could you even think about doing this? Snap out of it, right? The sociology is constantly trying to put us in some type of box. Your grandfather worked himself to death, and that's our family tradition. How could you even think of running into the jungle? Things like that. So people that people are attached to, and the opinions that those people have, become attachments, and then, oh yeah, I guess you're right, and then we compromise, and then we're back into that self and into that situation that is a perpetual dissatisfaction machine. There's a perpetual incongruity with satisfaction. And yet that's just a cultural norm. It's a vulgar norm, really. And it's not true. You were different as a kid as you are today, and that's fine. You shouldn't be like a kid to necessarily. I mean, I'm not saying give up your happiness and your playful way of interacting with this universe. I'm not saying don't give up that part. But you were also pretty foolish in some things, and if you gave that up or stopped doing that, stopped picking your nose at the table or something like that, that's good. Okay, there's positive changes and negative changes all at the same time. But again, according to what perspective? I think objectively, not picking your nose at the table is better than before. And if you're being honest with yourself, you should be able to admit that too. Now, super subnormal, vulgar people that want to wear diapers and stuff. No, that's not the right direction. Sorry. It's much more convenient to just do it the other way, and it's not messy, and You get what I'm saying? So there's still skillfulness in choosing to curate of what you bring into your life and what you don't. But see, of course, how about this? Being a mendicant monk, you're begging for food. That seems to be, to a practical person, to be a move in the wrong direction, because you're getting away from self-reliance. Oh, there's a word. Uh-oh, we're getting in trouble with Emerson now. How transcendental is self-reliance? From a Buddhist perspective. I see an essay coming. I don't know. How many words do I got left? But that's sort of a step too far for practical people, and that's why they don't do it. And that's why there's still self involved, and that's why they don't get free of that chain around that weight tarot card's little figure's neck. You might get halfway through it. It might take out a few chinks, but they don't get all the way there. And so Goat Grumpy has him at his hooves somewhere. So I think that's the fundamental disconnect and misunderstanding Westerners have, or what people understand to be Western or traditionally Western mindset. And the Buddhist practice of no self, or achieving no self via self-abasement. But again, that word can be overblown. It's not like they're taking extreme forms of self-abasement. It's pretty mild if you think about it. What's the big deal? And see, this is the thing. Put yourself back into the culture of northern India at that time. There was no social security. There were people that were seriously injured, guys that were in, let's say, security forces, like Teutonic Knights, like accompanying caravans and things like that were missing limbs or had a horrible disease, and they were not capable physically of supporting themselves. So they were beggars. Is that so terrible? And people, when they saw them, some of them, just like when you see a stray cat, they had no problem giving them a little bit of food. And although you might have seen in the movies how beggars act, they weren't the groveling kind. They were just like, hey, I'm walking through here, or perhaps with my crutch, and you have the opportunity to give me something or not. I'm not going to stand in front of your door and beg. But if you have something and you can give me something, then that's good karma for you, isn't it? God bless you. And you can think, just like with stray animals, people got enough food. A lot of times they got too much. Instead of throwing it away, they get some good karma out of it, and they do feel good about that. And here's a man, again, not a drunk. This is a religious practitioner, someone who has his discipline on point. He's not taking the food and then exchanging it for a bottle of vino and getting blotto in the public square and puking or something like that. Very different type of way that he's comporting himself. So how much of a self-abasement is that? Maybe it's not even effective enough, but again, what we're talking about, a way of reducing the grip of a concept of self on the practitioner as a practice, and not seeing it through the eyes of common, normal, vulgar people that don't understand why that is a practical practice as far as attaining no self goes. And that no self is important in order to get rid of the fetters of conceit that are keeping you tied to devilish forms of dissatisfaction that are hidden in that form of delusionality. So, see, there's the theory. There, you have an answer. That doesn't do it, though. That doesn't help you. That's like me describing. There's a thing called a lock, and then there's a key, and then you stick the key in, and then you turn, and the bolt is retracted, and then you can turn the handle and open the door and then walk through. That your lock, your door, your handle, your key, those are all things you have to do yourself. And if you mess up one little thing, well, I turned the key and I pushed and I pushed and I pushed. Door didn't open. You're a fraud. You do that. Well, it's not my problem. You have to turn the key and then turn the knob, then push. Okay? That was the instruction. In your case, it's going to be different. In fact, it might be an electric door. You might have to go open up the panel and look at the wires. I don't have that type of door. I don't have that type of manual. But ultimately, that whole bolt thing, retracting, and then that type of step process, and that bolt retracting would be no self. That's pretty essential for the door to open. Yes or no? You're going to grant me that point? And you can retract it 75% into the bolt, or what is it, the lock. You can retract 70, but if there's still 25% blocking, you got 25% self in the game. You can rattle that door. Rattle that door. I've got 75% no self. I've been rattle. Rattle, do. Take off your shoe. Do. Somebody turn that into a scene in a film. The Practical Philosopher. I'm working on it right now. Of course, no funding. You know, another source of dissatisfaction potentially. But yeah, that's not enough. 75% no self. It's still 25% self, 25% bolt in the door. So that's why these practitioners, and again, let's forget about Buddhism, these were samanas, so there was the samana tradition already, like I said, of old soldiers and other veritable people that were penniless due to factors that were pretty understandable, that had not lost their dignity, that were dependent on people like farmers, because that job was very physically demanding, and their wives for food. But it wasn't just any family, right? It was, I'm walking through the neighborhood, maybe this family has nothing, and so they get no good karma, and I get no food. But the other three families, that's enough for me, and I'm not casting aspersions. I can see that this family, there's 8 kids, half of them are starving. I don't expect a handout. Okay. In fact, it's not a handout, really. It's a gesture. It's an exchange of karma. Because in a lot of cases, those guys, they could have done something else. But because they wanted to practice more religiously and allow people the opportunity to get good kama via dana, which is generosity, because generosity is the way to riches, inner riches. They were in fact spreading the wealth, not taking from it. Spreading the true principle of wealth. Like all these damn misers, they have paper money. Right? They have money on paper, but essentially they're just taking. They're not wealthy, no matter how much money they have. A lot of times when they die, like disappear, like a bad dream, bad stench from a room, people are amazed at how much they've hoarded, how much they've extracted and taken away from the environment. And you would think, just like, Rumpelstiltskin or some type of fairy tale, that would teach people not to do that, but we're talking about the defilement of greed, right? Just like some people have gallstones. Like I once went to a place where they sprayed people with silicone or injected them with that and then sliced their bodies into little discs, and they found one of these guys died of gallstones. So just a whole sack. That's what the spirit of greed gets you in the end. But look at that. Even poor people can be generous with rice. Gotta eat the whole damn plate. You can give half. And then guess what? You look amazing, and you feel amazing, and it didn't really cost you anything, did it? This is not to say that all people close to agriculture would give to samanas and monks out of sheer generosity. Some of them, many of them, are superstitious. And why are they that? Because they're very close to nature. And they know that there's, for example, different reasons why the rains don't come or there's a blight. And that these reasons aren't all scientific. And if they can help themselves, even in a way that other people don't understand, such as doing good deeds to help influence favorable conditions, then that's what they're going to do. In fact, they're looking for opportunities. And and some business people are this way too. Why does on one day 3 customers come in and buy everything, and 3 weeks no customers? Why did this customer call on that day and not 2 days ago? Or why did he call back and order 3 times more, and last week he only ordered this month? So sometimes worldly people can see things in that way, and yet strangely enough, some will testify that it does work. We don't know how these things work, but they have been known to work. And every little good deed helps, doesn't it? Even if you think that way a little bit, and you think the other way a lot more, it's still good. And if you do experience something bad, maybe it'll only be half as bad, because you put in sort of an insurance policy with good karma. So there's different reasons for that. But ultimately, just think of the no self aspect, where you don't know whether you're going to eat tomorrow. Think a lot of these. If you're reduced to alms, that's sort of the way you're living. Day to day. Here now. You're in the here and you're in the now. And whether you're going to live or die is not up to you. Whether you're going to eat, you don't know. So that's the type of living on the edge, consciously, that can remove delusionality down to its lowest points. And it's under those types of conditions that are favorable to attaining and maintaining non-self. And it takes those extreme measures to do it, and to do it consistently, because self, the concept of self, is so powerful, is so determinate, is so normal in this dimension. And it's animalistic, it's automatic, it's reflective. It's something that can just imbue the frames and imbue your perspectives without you even being conscious of it. And that is another devilish aspect of it. Why am I so angry right now? What is happening? Where is it coming from? Well, it's coming from the self. And the self is normal, Normal, But it is not super normal, is it? And so it's challenging, and that's the reason why, at least from the standpoint of normal people, that certain religious practitioners have gone to supernormal lengths to get supernormal results, especially concerning self and the attainment of non-self. Yet look, even there, when I say attainment of non-self, you see how even the language is against it. It's not to be attained. The release of self, the fading of self, the dissolving of self. How do you attain that? I'm working towards something that won't exist. So you can even see how our cognition isn't built for either entertaining these processes, let alone realizing them. And yet there's another word, realizing. Realizing, well, no. Dispensing with, it's sort of like an invisible cloak that you put on, and how about this, that you dissolve. Or dispel, I like that one. It's like a spell, the self is a spell. But as I know, many Westerners are just addicted to philosophy, addicted to the mind, and won't practice to the extent that they should. You can just as a measure of spiritual hygiene or mental hygiene, as I like to call it, as I've coined the term, is to, if you're feeling dissatisfied about anything or vaguely dissatisfied, if you feel a frame has come in, assume that self is involved. And so question yourself, who am I? And then ... to be angry about this or that, or disappointed about this or that, or dissatisfied by this or that. Who am I? What if I were different? What if I was like this person? What if I was like the Buddha? Would he get angry about this? How would he see it? So that you can see yourself in comparison to others. And you might, again, take funny comparisons. Like, what if I was the person I just saw that was without even a shirt on their back type of person? Would I be angry or upset about this? What is it about this concept of self that I am realizing right now or captured in right now that is leading to this dissatisfaction or irritation or another? And is that unquestionable? Why is it that it has to be that way? Why can't you just drop it, right? See, we're already talking about a you. So your you that you're manifesting won't drop it. But why do you have to have that version of you if it's not you and it's not yours? That you know that no self is possible. And so you can start having those types of interactions with yourself. See? You'll say, oh, this is crazy. He's a schizophrenic, man. He's talking to himself. Yeah, precisely. Talk back to your perceived self. And mess it up a little bit. Like, yeah, look, if you were completely different, you would see things differently, so why can't you be completely different? Why can't you be? Huh? People have a lot of clothes in the wardrobe. You can dress conservatively, you can put on a suit, or you can put on some flip-flops and some shorts and a t-shirt. People will perceive you to be differently. They'll treat you differently. You can also act differently in that costume or another. So why not use that variability that we have on a personal level? You're the angry person, take off those clothes and go back and change into something else. Throw those in the wash. The sweaty ones with the dirt on it, the stains, whatever it was. Clean yourself up. Take some time, some self-care, some distance. Put on some new clothes. But do it metaphysically. Right? But give yourself the time and maybe do the clothes thing too. Why not? No matter what clothes you're wearing, if you get into a mind state that has jammed you up, change. Right? Take a shower. Right? Attend to yourself, attend to your body. Take your focus off whatever was bothering you. How about this? Jump in a stream. If you're samana, jump in a stream. Shock therapy. Make it a cold shower, right? Or a hot shower, or vary them. Then get out and put on a new set of clothes. You could even burn the clothes. If it was a really bad experience, take those clothes. Those are unlucky clothes. Throw them away. Don't wear them again. I'm not saying do that in every case. That would be wasteful. But how about this? Wash them. Wash them by hand. Take them, wash them, and do it all day. Like how about put bleach in, bleach out the stains, scrub off every little piece of whatever it was that hit you. Do it as an exercise. Hanging up to dry, wash them again. Take them down, wash them again. Or if you want to have some brilliant yellow clothes, get yourself some jackfruit, throw whatever clothes you have and boil it up in a pot. You can bring that boiling factor into it. That's nice. Smells good too. Changes the color. Gets rid of the stains. Also has astringent anti-microbial properties to it. And then hang that out, wring it out, hang it up to dry. Do it again if you need to do that, because it's about changing your state of mind, changing a self, cleaning a self, removing the self from the self. Someone wrote in, teacher, do you realize what you just said? All of Russia should be changed. How shall that happen? And I thought to myself also the difference between a bodhisattva and an arahat. That the bodhisattva is worldlier and in many cases puts himself in tremendously dangerous positions to affect change. Now it's better when the bodhisattva is not too passionate to be foolish, but on the other hand, if he's too tame, then what will become of the vision? What will become of the change? In many cases, the bodhisattva is the catalyst of tremendous change. And depending on the situation, it might be appropriate. But of course, that brings the bodhisattva in conflict with existing, established factors. And we don't have to see this too personalized. Like, I don't want to make this a personal thing. I think it's always great to look at the theory and look at the marvelous personalities throughout history that have embodied, at least in different areas and fields, including chemistry, the bodhisattva spirit. That there were people that challenged the orthodoxy in their time, like if we go back to the 16th century, and said, look, you're a bunch of idiots. Who are you? Got a bunch of titles. What do you know? You're wrong. I don't want to make this personal, but a lot of times it does get personal because people have their sense of self invested in things, and people, especially worldly, normal, tending towards the subnormal type of people, they invest in worldly paths and they really feel as if the bodhisattva principle comes and just rips all of their clothes off and whips them and sends them through life as some type of swinish fool that they represent as a caricature. And that's the opposite of what they wanted. So, of course, this is problematic in a worldly sense. But I always like bringing it back to psychology. I don't point fingers. I don't name names. I don't get in personal conflicts. But that personal element still exists. So you could say a haiku that is so magically, enchantingly beautiful that 100 people just fall down, like are just in a spell, that are captured by that their entire lives. They'll come back to it and read it. But at the same time, that might cause immense hatred in hateful people for different obscure reasons. That, for example, beauty can provoke people. That's what provokes vandals, right? It's so beautiful that it disturbs them. It can't be beautiful because it's so out of congruence with their own internal state. They have to destroy it. See, even for normal people, that appears abnormal. But we live in a spectrum of abnormalcy and supernormalcy and subnormalcy, which makes this dimension so zany and unpredictable. Because you think you're normally skillful, but there are people immensely less skillful than you. You think you have seen through this and that and have escaped through this and that and have liberated yourself from this and that, but rest assured, the hoi polloi, the lowest of the low, they are complete slaves to the lowest of the low. They are worse than animals in this realm, and that is just the precursor of the realms to come. But I do believe that the Arahat principle is better. I think it is more pure. I think it is more liberated than the Bodhisattva principle. And yet, while living in this life, it's always a confluence of the two. Who is truly an Arahat and who is partly Arahat, partly Bodhisattva, partly unskillful, whether one wants to admit it or not. Most people don't, especially religious people. That's their conceit, isn't it? And those kinds do exist. They do. They've always existed. Here I am, look at my robes. I'm shining like the moon. And yet, inside, are things that clear, or is it just a pretense? Well, that's for each individual practitioner to know. And yet, having lofty goals is not a bad thing. It's a very good thing. It's just we should be honest with ourselves so that we do not deceive ourselves or deceive others necessarily. And yet practicing, that's the best thing we can do in any circumstances. So yeah, why not? Total reform of Russia in this time or in the years to come. I think all of the peoples there have suffered enough. But only the devil knows how much more they will suffer for different reasons. But not just Russia, the entire Western world. Hey, how about this? The entire world, East and West. Let's think big, shall we? Why should we stay in the Middle Ages of modernity, civility, dignity, and respect? Why can't we reinvent those terms in this time? With or without total destruction, because that might be a part of a process that is ongoing. How many people alive today will be alive in 10 years' time? Or 5, or 3, 2, 1. Lift off. Whoosh. Why can't we expand the parameters to the entire world, the entire universe, the entire cosmos, all time, present, past, and future? Create a supernova in which all impurities are burned and only the purest of pure are left. Niet, niet, niet. No, we can't have that, say the Russians. Brothers, have you not looked at the newest images from the James Webb telescope? Where are your eyes? Take a look. We have infinite generosity above, infinite beauty. Where are your eyes? You will deny a supernova when it's there. Change your mind. We're leaving the old world behind. The past is dead. In this present, be part of the new future. And don't look at those images with dry eyes. Why won't your eyes weep? Tria prima, mercury, salt, sulfur. Supernovas above, supernovas below. Be transformed now.